Question. I would like to ask an herbalist, what's your favorite way to introduce children to herbalism? It depends a lot on the child. Some child will be really into it and really drawn to it. Other child, other kids not so much. And that's okay. Like my kids, wait, I want to say my kids. And that's okay. I'm just picking up here. I might edit this. I might just leave it in. My parents really wanted me to get into drafting and work at General Motors. And I totally didn't. I had no draw to it. And for me, it worked out. So if your kid's not like drawn to herbalism, like, don't maybe push it or force it, because that might create conflict in your relationship. And you probably don't need or want that with your kids. But make yummy stuff for them, as opposed to like, don't have like, oh my God, this bitter is so bad. Here, try this. That might, sort of be something that turns them off. If you're going to give your kids herbs, they should see that you also use herbs. And if you're going to give your kids, herbs that are, because sometimes stuff does taste bad, like let them know, be like, hey, this is kind of gnarly. You can have a chaser after it, like just gulp this down and then immediately have this other thing. Like that's a good strategy for a lot of kids, rather than being like, it's not that bad. Don't ever say that to kids. Mostly, I think herbalists, we've had some of the worst stuff ever. And so when we say it's not that bad, it might be the worst thing the other person has ever tasted because they haven't had like wormwood decoction or something. There is via learning herbs. There's the Wildcraft board game. My daughter loves that game. All my kids like that game. There's the Herb Fairies books, right? So that's kind of like a pretty cool way to introduce herbalism and herbal concepts, and let them see you drinking and taking and using herbs. Go out for walks, spend time, be like, oh, this is the plant here in the garden or here at the park or here in the yard. This is the plant that we made that tea from, so that there's connections. Teach them about things like if it grows where you live, like plantain for mosquito bites or stings. Definitely teach them how to recognize poison ivy, right? So that not only do they know how to recognize it, but if they go out, with their friends, they can feel like, ooh, don't play there. There's poison ivy there. And then they teach it to their friends, and that makes them feel cool and empowered. While you're doing all of this and thinking of more, for sure, tell them not to eat anything without asking about it. Be like, oh, this is cool, that's cool and everything. If you want to eat something, ask me what it is. Let me confirm what it is before you put it in your mouth. I don't think it works great to just tell kids stuff is poisonous, because kids might not really get the concept of poisonous. One of the things that I've done when I've taught classes for kids is said something to the effect of like, have you ever thrown up? And most kids have by the time I'm talking to them. And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, you ever had really bad diarrhea? Again, most kids have. They'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, I know someone who ate something. They thought it was one thing and it wasn't. And they threw up and had really bad diarrhea at the same time. And all the kids are like, ah! Which is kind of how I feel about it. But that can be helpful because it's something that they can actually relate to. And I'm not saying don't tell kids that some stuff is dangerous or that you could die, but, give them something that is relatable to them. And of course, make them ask you before they consume anything, so that you can be sure that something like is, like a blueberry and not a buckthorn berry, or, something that is, potentially dangerous.